Welcome back to Level Headed Gamer, guys. My name is Joseph. Today, let's talk about classes and Outriders and which class is going to be right for you. And if you're interested in Outriders and Outriders content, make sure you subscribe down below because I'm going to be producing a lot more content about Outriders, as it's going to be a game I'm going to follow for a long time. Alright, let's get right into it though. Let's start with the Technomancer class. They play a support class role in Outriders, focusing mainly on indirect damage and long-distance combat. They will utilize gadgets, turrets, and the ability to summon miniguns and RPGs. Out of the bunch, they're going to possess the lowest amount of health, which will give them the ability to heal themselves, the only ones to be able to do that in Outriders, as well as leeching health by simply damaging enemies. As well as that, every single character in Outriders has a very unique melee, and Technomancer is no different. Its melee is able to freeze enemies in their place. To get an idea what kind of abilities you can play around with Technomancer, let's look at a couple of abilities. Let's start with Tool of Destruction. The ability to summon a minigun, which will be, I can already tell, great for mobbing, or an RPG, which will be able to interrupt enemies as well as bosses and do some high level damage. Second ability, Fixing Wave. The ability to just heal yourself and your allies, which is the only character in the game who has that kind of ability. The third ability is going to be Cold Snap. It's an area of effect ability that freezes enemies in their place, setting them up for combos whether your friends or yourself create. The fourth ability is going to be the Pain Launcher, which is a turret that carpet bombs an area. Now, combining the Cold Snap and the Pain Launcher, you can already see what kind of combos you'll be able to create in this game. But Pain Launcher is not the only turret that you get in the game. So far, they've also showed Blighted Turret, which shoots off toxic, causing damage over time. And you can use it in a defensive capability by setting it up and running back, or even offensive, setting up the turret and then flanking the enemies from the back. What I find really interesting in Outriders is that each character is going to have 3 skill trees. You won't be able to max out all 3 skill trees, so you're going to have to wisely pick your choice of which abilities you want to take advantage of. You can mix and match sort of like you do in Borderlands, try to create the best builds, so it's going to be really interesting how people take advantage of the skill trees to create their builds. But just to go down the line of the skill trees we have, let's start with the Pestilence tree, which is going to take advantage of DK weapons and skill damages. And it's going to focus on assault rifles and sniper rifles and give boosts for them. The second tree being Tech Shaman, which is going to focus on indirect damage by boosting the damage of your turrets, as well as going to give you a second chance ability. Basically, when you run out of health, it'll boost a little bit of your health to give you a chance to kind of retreat and recover your health. The third tree is going to be the Demolisher, which is supposed to be the jack of all trade and give you bonuses and buffs to all your gadgets and skills, which I feel like we're going to be able to utilize. Demolisher tree is going to be one of the more useful trees for the Technomancer. And the Technomancer, to be honest, looks like the class I'm going to start with. It's so far my favorite out of the ones I've seen, but obviously to me they all look cool. The second class we're going to talk about is going to be the Pyromancer, or basically the mage of the game, and also being able to have a support class role. It looks like in Outriders, a lot of the classes jump between roles depending how you spec them out, whether it be support or DPS and tank builds, and it looks like they can jump between the two. But it's going to focus on mid-range area of attack using fire abilities, as well as melee attack is going to set its enemies on fire. Now let's talk about what kind of abilities the Pyromancer is going to possess and what you can be able to play around with. What I like about this game is that every character has very impressive looking abilities and very unique abilities, really making you want to switch between different classes and characters. For the Pyromancer, the first ability they revealed so far is the Thermal Bomb. It sets one enemy on fire and brings them up into the air and basically causes an explosion that causes other enemies to take damage. The second ability is going to be Ash Blast. Basically covers the enemy in ash and immobilizes them from attacking and freezes them in one spot. As well as having the third ability, Heat Wave, which is going to send a line of fire in front of you, setting all the enemies afire, which is going to be great for kind of keeping all the enemies back in case they try to charge you. I can already see how you can utilize Ash Blast with Heat Wave together. And if you cause fire damage to the characters, you can utilize the fourth ability, which is called Overheat, which causes further damage to any enemies already afire. And the character Pyromancer is going to heal by utilizing the abilities, is going to mark enemies, and any enemy who's been defeated that were marked will cause you to heal. The 3 skill trees you're going to have at your disposal with the Pyromancer is going to be the first one, Ashbreaker, focusing bonuses against marked enemies, which I can already tell is going to be the tree if you want to create a character who's going to be constantly healing and at the same time dealing damage. The second tree is going to be Firestorm, which is going to forego all the healing and maximize on damage output. And the third skill tree is going to be Tempest. It will play basically a tank role and will have unique abilities to revive yourself upon death, which is again the only character who's able to fully revive themselves without the help of your friends. Let's talk about the third character class in this game, the Trickster. Now this guy is for anybody who likes close combat, in and out kind of character, and basically in RPGs would be called the Rogue. The powers revolve around space and time powers, and even the melee, when you hit somebody, will slow the enemies in their track. Now this is the other class I am really thinking about maining, and I don't know, I'm still battling between Technomancer and Trickster. So we'll see when the game comes out which one I'll be jumping on first. Now for the Trickster, the abilities he's going to have at his disposal are as follows. The first one being the Temporal Slice, which basically stuns enemies in their tracks and starts giving them damage over time. With the second ability, Borrowed Time, creates a clone of you that you can rush in, kind of do some damage, and then teleport back. I can also see how this is going to be an ability that you can use to get away from enemies. Or it might be even a good ability to kind of rush in, do as much damage as you can, and rush out. The third ability, Slow Trap. It's going to create a bubble that's going to slow down time with anything that goes in there, whether it be enemies, bullets, or whatever it is, so in case you want to dodge, or kind of mitigate some of the damage by freezing enemies in their place and running back, as well as setting them up for combos and just maximum amount of damage. The fourth ability is called Hunt the Prey. You basically mark one enemy and teleport behind them. This reminds me a lot of Mass Effect when you create a Vanguard class and you were able to just teleport in and hit one enemy really hard. It right away just kind of reminded me of that, and I'm on board with that because I played Vanguard and Mass Effect all the time. In terms of the way Trickster is going to be healing, he's going to be healing by taking enemies down, which also is going to give him shields. Now, let's get to the different skill trees that the Trickster possesses. The first one is going to be called Master of Space, which improves bonuses for movement and will have focus on shotguns and SMGs. So I can already tell it's going to focus on freezing enemies and keeping them there immobilized as long as possible, while you take advantage of running in and just doing as much damage as possible. The second skill tree is going to be called Harbinger, which will focus on mitigating damage and giving armor bonuses, giving the character more of a tanky kind of role. Again, I can already see how people are going to create builds around just always keeping your armor up and never dying, sort of like Moze in Borderlands 3. And the third class is going to be called, third skill tree, is going to be called Assassins. And that's just going to go on full damage output. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a harder class to play with because you're not going to be healing as much, but it's just about rush in, do as much damage as you can, rush out. It's going to be very skill focused. The last class we're going to talk about is the Devastator. Now this big guy is going to be the main tank character of the game because he's going to have the most amount of health and armor. He's going to have a bunch of interrupt skills, and I can already see how he's going to play, as well as a tank role, he's going to play a support role by interrupting all those big attacks from bosses. As well as his melee attack is going to cause bleed to any character it hits. Now let's look what kind of abilities the Devastator possesses, and he does possess some of the cooler abilities in the game as well. The first one being called Gravity Leap, which basically pulls you up into the sky and you become these couple of rocks that you can redirect back at either an enemy or use it as a tactic to escape, let's say, a horde of enemies that's rushing you. Also, he's going to be the guy who's able to set up a shield. So in case with the second ability called Reflect Bullets, all the enemy fire that's going to be fired at you or your friends, you can put up a shield that will absorb all the bullets and redirect them back at all the enemies, causing just a huge amounts of damage. The third ability is going to be called Impale, which basically, just as it sounds, impales enemies from the ground and kills 3 or 4, I think, at a time. You'll be able to upgrade it, so I think doing more spikes coming out of the ground, which I can see how it's going to be good with dealing with mobs as well. And the last ability is called Endless Mass, which basically creates this little mini black hole, sucks enemies into one little corner, setting them up either for combos, a high output of damage, or even getting them away from you. And the way Devastator is going to heal is going to be healed by killing enemies in a close proximity to them. Now the skill trees Devastator is going to have to play around with are as follows. It's going to be the first skill tree is going to be called Vanquished, which focuses on close quarter combat and just going all in. The second skill tree is called Warden, which looks like it's going to be the ultimate tank class by just giving you a whole lot of armor and health and being able to take loads of damage and taking all the aggro for yourself. And the third skill tree, the Seismic Shifter, which is going to be a damage over time type of character and more of a mid-range character instead of close quarters combat. So that's basically all the classes you're going to have in the game to pick from. And I'm again jumping between Technomancer and Trickster myself. I don't know which one I'm going to pick yet, as more information is going to come out and which one I'm going to be more excited to jump in with first. But also seeing myself trying every single class out in the game just to see what kinds of abilities I can play around with. And I'm really excited for this game to come out on February 2nd, 2021 and getting in the game with you guys. You let me know which character you're going to pick and you're going to play with and who you're going to main first. Are you looking forward to this game at all? Leave a comment down below, let's have a discussion.